What becomes our calling in life, what is the reason we're here, begins with feelings of doubt and fear and insecurity. I remember when our eldest child, Ben, was born, and we had spent a couple days in the hospital doing the normal stuff. You kind of rest up and make sure the baby's okay, and everything was okay, and we had talked to everyone, and so it was time to check out. And so one of the nurses told me to go down to the car and get the car seat, make sure it's all set up correctly, and go get the car seat. And so I went down to the car, and I looked at that car seat, and I realized I had absolutely no idea how to set it up. Maybe I should have thought about this before I started, but I hadn't. Too much going on. It was like looking at a Rubik's Cube, and that's from saying a guy who doesn't know how to do Rubik's Cubes. It was just a puzzle that I didn't understand. And it was crazy. I had gotten married. I had lived through the Egyptian Revolution. I was about to get a graduate degree. It was the week before I was graduating from seminary, but I could not figure out that dang car seat. And I must have messed with that thing for like 10 or 15 minutes, straps flying everywhere. And by the end, I had figured out how to get the top part released from the bottom part, so that was a victory, but I could not figure out, I didn't know about the little things where you strap in the bottom base of the car seat. So I went up and I brought it in, and I kind of declared sheepishly my failure with the car seat. And, the nurses kind of laughed at me. I wasn't the first dad who didn't know how to do a car seat, I think. And one of them was nice enough to go down and show me how it's done. But then that was it. It was time to go. And so we strapped little Ben into his car seat, and off we went. And I remember, later, months later, years later, Stephanie and I were talking about that moment when we were leaving the hospital and how it felt. And we both shared how both of us had felt the same thing of kind of like, this is joyous, but also really scary. Like, are we sure they should let us take this baby? I mean, we have no idea what we're doing. I can't even strap in the car seat, which was like step one. And, I really don't know how to be a parent, and I don't know how to take care of a baby, and I'm in charge of caring for this entirely new human being. Am I really ready for this responsibility? Well, I wonder if all of you know this feeling too, whether it's being a parent or just something else. A big task, a big responsibility facing you, and it's intimidating. Whether it's at school or work or whatever in life, you see this big question to your future, and you're excited about it, but also there's at least a little doubt, or maybe a lot of doubt. But the thing I've found in life is that usually things end up going fine, right? Despite the insecurity, despite the worries of what ifs, whether for parents or for many other kinds of things. Sure, you make some mistakes. I made lots of mistakes. Sure, you learn from your failures. But so long as you have love at the center of what you're doing, so long as you're sort of open to life and paying attention and learning some lessons and maybe learning them over and over again, things tend to work themselves out generally in life. This gospel story we hear is much the same setting in a way, at least for the disciples, because they're about to be set free in the ministry. It's weird. It's Easter. It's after the resurrection we've been in, but then this week it puts us before the resurrection again, before the crucifixion. Jesus is about to be crucified, and we're in the Gospel of John. So to kind of look at the setting, this is the time when it would be his Last Supper, but John doesn't talk at all about the Last Supper. John focuses on this other narrative where Jesus washes the disciples' feet, and then he tells them this new commandment, which he says a few different times in a few different ways. Love one another as I have loved you. And it's kind of a special reading because, if you've ever asked yourself the question, like if you only had an hour to live with a loved one, what would you want to say, right? Or if you're near a deathbed, on the deathbed, or with someone on the deathbed, what would be the last thing you would want to say to a person you love? Well, this gospel story is sort of that answer for Jesus, right? These are the last things he wants to say to his disciples. And it's a beautiful thing because, again, he focuses everything on love. He says, I give you a new commandment that you love one another just as I have loved you. You should also love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. It's such simple advice in a way. It's almost like a duh thing. But it's so good too. Focus your life on love. But as I was thinking about this, and this is life advice, if you're anything like me, you really sort of like this commandment. It's a beautiful commandment. It's a beautiful final thing to hear from Jesus. But you also wish there were a few more details to your life and faith. More of a system. Give me an exact roadmap to how to do this life thing, how to be a Christian in this world. Show me exactly how it's done. It's like, again, with the car seat and the baby, how am I going to do this? But that's not how life works, and that's not how faith works in Jesus either. That's not to say that Jesus doesn't give us some advice about living. Actually, the New Testament's full of advice on how we can live, but Jesus doesn't micromanage every situation. Jesus doesn't write our story before they're written and tell us exactly which decision we should make, or what we should become, or what major we should take, or whatever. God gives us some freedom, and what God really does is He doesn't tell us how we're going to get there, but He gives us the destination, which is to love one another. That's the goal. That's what we're called to do. And then He kind of lets us fill in the blanks through that commandment. Love one another, and then go figure out how to do that. And so that's the commandment. That's the goal. It's to love. It's to love radically. It's to love graciously. It's to love generously, sometimes in ways we don't want to love. And it's to follow love wherever it takes us. And the truth is, when we follow love, we don't always know where it's going to take us. I lived in North Dakota at one point. That wasn't where I thought love would take me. I married someone from Alabama. We've all had things in our life that wouldn't have happened had we not been following love. We don't know where it's going to take us. We see this from the story of Acts 2, that big long story about Peter, and he has this weird dream. It sounds like it's mostly about food, being able to eat things that the Jewish people thought were unclean. It is about that, but it was more about people. That was kind of the sign, the symbol of the greater message to Peter and the Jewish disciples at that time, that the gospel wasn't just for the Jewish people anymore. It was for everybody, right? So it was this symbol, go out and love everybody, which for those early Christians was actually a surprise. This was not how they thought about their mission. So it took them places they were surprised by, and love does the same thing for us. But it's always worth it. And on this big day, for those of you who are being confirmed, I just want to say we are so proud of you, what you have been and what you've become and what you've learned. And I've sort of come in at the tail end of your guys' education, but I know that those who've been involved with it, Charlie Fiedler and Pastor Tom before me, they've spoken so glowingly. Before I came here, this is a great confirmation class. And we just are excited about you guys. And the thing I'm really excited about is to see your gifts in life, the gifts that you're already sharing and that you'll continue to share with other people, with the church, with whatever in your life. We see those gifts, and we hope you see them too. And today we are praying that you would trust God's love to unpack your calling in life. You guys are too young to exactly know what your calling will be, or where you'll end up, or what your career will be, but we're praying for you that you would let love unpack whatever that's going to be, that you would trust in God's love. And I wanted to share one more story of what it means to trust in God's love that I saw in a friend of mine. In my former call, I became friends with this nun whose name was Sister Kathleen, and she was a force of nature. And Sister Kathleen founded this amazing organization in the area we lived in called Ministry on the Margins, and the name kind of says it. It's ministry to people who are kind of on the outside, people who are pushed away, with a special focus on the poor and those who had been in prison and their families. So an amazing ministry. And if you just went there today and you saw the results and you saw her and you saw the organization and all the stuff it does and just how well she leads it, you would think that she always had this unshakable faith and this unshakable vision of what that ministry would become. But this isn't so. I heard her talk about the story of how it was founded once. And what happened was, in her life, she had kind of become aware of the prison population and how much they struggle and how much people go in and out of jail, and how much the families who are part of who have a husband or someone in prison, how much they struggle too. And so she felt this calling to somehow reach out, but she didn't know what to do. She's a nun, doesn't know much about what it's like in the slammer. So she gives a call to the prison, not knowing what she's going to say, but it rings and she's like, can I speak to, I think the warden, the person who's in charge? This is Sister Kathleen from Sisters Annunciation Monastery. And they're like, okay. Amazingly, they just put her right through to the warden. And she said, hi, this is Sister Kathleen. I would like to do something for the prisoners. Do you think there's anything I could do to help? And there was a pause on the other end of the line. And then the person said, why, yes. And she said the first thought she had after that was, darn it. But that's how calling is. It's that insecurity thing. Because she knew that she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what it would look like. And she didn't know what gifts she had to offer. And she was worried if she had what it took. But they started to talk about it. And what began as this little innocent, ignorant conversation of what will it be became this amazing ministry. It's just like Peter, who followed that inner voice telling him to show love to everyone. She followed that inner voice, and today this organization serves hundreds of people each week. It runs a food pantry. It provides clothes and other basics to impoverished family. It offers counseling and spiritual care and hospitality. It's this amazing thing, and it all happened because she trusted that inner voice of God's love, calling her to something she didn't know. And I don't know if any of you guys are going to become nuns. Some of you probably can't. I think probably not. But this same pattern in her life is the pattern for your guys' life too. And we as a church today are saying to you, you have learned who Jesus is, and we see your giftedness, and we see what you have to offer as followers of Christ. And we are excited for you to share those gifts with the world. And we promise to help you and support you as you live out your faith, and to continue, and as you continue to discover what it means to follow God's love wherever it's going to take you. And we aim that message at the confirmation students, but we also aim it at all of you, because this is our calling for all of us in the church together. We journey together towards God's love wherever it takes us. And even though we don't know where it's going to take us, we trust that God's love is our roadmap, and it's the only roadmap we need. Amen. Let's continue as we rise, as we're able, in song.